right, this is continuing our lesson on the math practices. We have talked about math practice 1 and 2, and we're going to continue with math practice 3 today. Remember, the format that our notes are going to take is math practice number, what it says. We'll take a minute and we'll clarify any words or phrases that you don't understand, and that's going to be really helpful today. After we know what those words and phrases mean, then we'll put it in our own words, and then we will do an activity or an example to help us understand this. At the very end is when we will have a reflection where you are going to write down what you will do. Before we get started on math practice 3, let's review. Who can tell me math practice 1? Math practice 1, what is it? I hear the shuffling of the notes. That means people are going back to reread it again. Yes, Calista.
Make sense of problems and persevere in solving them.
Make sense of problems and persevere in solving them is absolutely correct. Math practice 2, we did it yesterday. Who can tell me what math practice 2 is? Landis? Yes, reason abstractly and quantitatively, and we have these images to remind us what that actually means. Both of these images represent beautiful starry night skies with trees. This is real life or quantitative. This is abstract. It's the same type of thing, different representations. They each have their own purpose and their own type of beauty. And now we're ready for math practice 3. We're writing this down in our notes. Math practice 3, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. Get that written down. And as you're writing it down, I want you to think about, are there any words that you have trouble understanding? Anything that needs to be clarified? Think about that as you're writing it down. Landis, is this written down? All right, what words need to be clarified? Who needs help with a couple of words? Just one student. So that means everyone else can explain the word that he has a question about? What words? Lucas? Critique. Okay, what does critique mean? Who can help them understand what critique means? Callista?
So critique kind of means like give little tips or whatever to help them change it to make it better.
Good. And as we are explaining this and people are offering their feedback, let's include those words so that we remember what critique means. It means give tips. It means give feedback. What else does critique mean? Landis? Yeah, it does also mean give help. I would also like to point out that critique, do you hear the word criticism in that word? See, because critique is constructive criticism. Whenever we critique, we want to make sure that we are being kind and positive and helpful about it. Constructive criticism. I also would like to add the word judge. We're judging others' thoughts. We're judging others' work. So give tips, judge, look for feedback, help them, constructive criticism. All of those are words that help us understand the word critique better. What other words need to be clarified? Garrett? Viable, yes. And who can help Garrett understand what viable means? Uh-oh. So should we have a lot more people raising their hand to say, I need this one clarified? Let's try that again. Who needs this? Who needs a word clarified? Good. And what word do you need clarified, Garrett? Viable. Good. That's a little bit better. And what does viable mean? It means to, if I have to construct a viable argument, that means I need to construct a really good argument. It means I need to be able to persuade somebody. So it needs to be persuasive. It means it needs to be correct. So again, we're writing down all of these words that will help us understand the word viable. Another word that could replace viable would be the word valid. And my other class came up with the word relatable. I like that word too. Has to be an argument that you can relate to. All right, and there's one last word that I want to clarify because we see this word arguments. Does that mean that we are arguing in class? Does it mean that we're screaming and shouting at each other? When I'm talking about arguments of this type, what am I talking about? Landis? Yeah, it's like a debate. Yeah, honestly, yes. When you're constructing a viable argument, you are just trying to figure out the answer sometimes. It means that we're finding our own reasons or explanations. Sorry, Calista, did I take what you were going to say? Okay. So now that we know what each one of those words mean, I want you to think about this, and I want you to put it in your own words. This means ... So if I say construct viable arguments, I'm saying construct really good persuasive reasons to prove something, right? Yeah, construct really good debates. We're trying to prove that our answer is right. So you're already saying really good things that you can be writing down for what this means. There's another piece to it though, and critique the reasoning of others. When I'm saying critique the reasoning of others, remember critique means we're judging or we're giving tips or feedback. The reasoning of others, maybe that means the thinking of others. Again, you're writing down, this means ... and you're putting it in your own words. Take another 60 seconds to do that. Everybody should be writing right now, in-person students, online students. You're writing down what this means. Remember, this is your warning. This is your homework tonight. Whatever you're writing down right now, this is going to go in Canvas. So write it down now. So all you have to do tonight is just type it in. And now, after you have finished writing down what this means, you're ready for your example. Okay? So below this means ... where you wrote down all of your words, here is your example. I'll tell you what to write. I just want you to read first, okay? It says, Elijah showed his work to solve the equation. Here's the equation. And your job is to use Math Practice 3 to assess his understanding. This is what I need you to write down. I need you to write down the equation, but I also need you to say Elijah's work. So it'll look something like this. Elijah's work. And then you'll copy down the equation and his work. Does that make sense? So you don't need to write down all of these words in purple. Elijah's work, and copy that down. Yes, Xander, you have a question? Okay. So again, this is Elijah's work. We're going to look at his work and use Math Practice 3 to assess the understanding. In order to be successful with this, you do need to know how to solve equations, which I did teach you last spring through the videos during the school dismissal. This is where it's going to start to reveal who actually watched the videos and learned, and who was lazy and did not. If I find out that you were lazy and did not watch them and you're struggling with this, then you have extra homework, and that means you do need to watch those videos as well. This is something that you do need to know, and I did teach it, so the expectation is that you watch it and learn if you haven't done so already. Now, with that in mind, that's enough time to write all of this down, and now I have the question, what do you think about Elijah's work? I want you to discuss with your table mates What did Elijah do well? What does he need to improve on? What do you need to improve on based on this work? Did Elijah do everything correctly? Discuss with your groups. 60 seconds. Go. Elijah do well? Zeta.
I think like he kind of did like an idea of it because like at the top he knew that like you're supposed to like whatever you do to one side you have to do to the other.
Perfect. I think that's absolutely right. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other, and Elijah showed that very well. Landis.
What I thought of is like the left 8, so if you hate 8 and 5 is 3, so what he did is he changed it all.
He changed all the positive. Interesting, and I think I know where you're going with that, but I also think it reveals a little bit of misunderstanding from last spring, so let's talk about that. What we can see, and this does go back to 6th grade, is we can see that we are subtracting 5. How do you undo subtraction? This is something that you all learned in 6th grade. How do you undo subtraction? Nadia? You add. So Landis, that's what you're talking about. That's what you're seeing is he's choosing to add because it will undo that subtraction. Does that make sense? I think that's kind of what you're meaning with that love-hate stuff. Okay, so we add 5 to each side. That looks great, right? What happens when you have subtract 5 and you add 5? Well, it zeroes out. That's why you don't need to worry about that. Okay, and 16 plus 5 is 21. So first step looks great. I'm really impressed with Elijah's work on that first step. What about the next step? What are you seeing? Lucas? You see a -7 in x equals 21. Perfect. -7x equals 21. So how did he undo the -7? Nadia? He did. He added 7. Is that the right thing to do? Again, if you didn't pay attention in the spring, this is where you're going to be weak. Eyes on the screen. What's happening to x? It's being multiplied by a -7. How do you undo multiplication? With division. Did he undo in the correct way? No. He saw the -7 or the -7 here and thought, oh, up here I just added 5, so here I'll just add 7. But is that going to undo the multiplication? Okay, so let's do this the right way. There's Elijah's work. It's incorrect, so we're going to redo it ourselves the correct way. -7x minus 5 equals 16. And this will also be a good review of solving equations. Think about when you get dressed for the day and you put on your shoes and your socks. What do you put on first? You put on your sock first. After you put on your sock, then what do you put on? Okay, we put socks on both feet. So after socks are on both feet, then what do we put on? Then we put on our shoes. Now we go home. We want to get back to our bare feet to relax. What do we take off first? You take off your sock first? I mean, yeah, we put it on first, but do you really take your sock off first? No. You have to start by taking off your shoe. And that's how equations are built too. Here's x. What's happening to x? We multiplied by -7. That's your sock, because we did that first. Then we subtract 5. That's your shoe. So what are you going to take off first? Your shoe. How do I take off or undo subtracting 5? Adding 5. So that first step is still perfect. Subtracting 5 and adding 5, zero out. They undo each other. And that leaves me with -7x is equal to 21. The same thing that Elijah showed in his first step. Here's where he made the mistake, though, and here's where we're going to start making that correction. What's happening to x? It's being multiplied by -7. How are you going to undo multiplication? By dividing. So whatever I do to one side, as Zeta mentioned, we're going to do to the other side. What happens here? Well, remember, the reason I chose to divide is because I know that it will undo the multiplication. So that divides out. It has been undone. All I have left now is x. On the right-hand side, what is 21 divided by -7. Oh, that negative threw you off for a second, didn't it? I could tell. 21 divided by -7. Landis isn't phased. He used his calculator, like you all should have done and be doing right now. 21 divided by -7. Either your hand is raised because you know when you want to answer, or your hand is using the calculator to type it in. Either your hand is raised to answer, or your hand is using the calculator, typing it in, figuring it out. What did you get, Callista? -3. X is equal to a -3. The directions were to use Math Practice 3 to assess his understanding. In order to do that, sometimes we need to do it ourselves the right way. And then we can use it to look and see what mistakes he made. So how can we describe what mistake was made? Zeta.
Well, he made a really bad mistake when he didn't realize that the 7 was actually not divided.
Yeah, he made a mistake where he didn't undo it the right way. He didn't realize that it was multiplication. Would you say that Elijah still knows how to solve equations? Yeah. He understands the process, right? He knows he needs to get X alone, and whatever he does to one side, he does to the other side, and he does a really good job showing his work. Maybe we just need to reteach Elijah how to identify what's happening, right? Reminding him that X, or -7X means -7 times X. But yes, I think Elijah does understand solving equations. Now we have one more example. Again, this is going to test out your solving equation skills. This time I say solve the equation. You don't need to write any of the purple stuff, right? Just write down the equation. But as you solve the equation, I need you to create or construct at least 2 viable arguments that you can use to explain why your answer is correct. I need 2 viable arguments to explain why your answer is correct. Let's take 60 seconds. I want you to work through this with your table. I know we need that review of solving equations, but that helped, hopefully, seeing how that first one was done. 60 seconds to do this. Ready, set, go. Online students, pause the video and work on this on your own. We'll come back together shortly. What's the first steps here? In order to really understand this, we need to know how the equation was built. So look at X. What happened to X first? Landis? We divided by 9. That's like your sock then, right? Because it's what we did first. Do you take your sock off first? No. So let's keep reading. X was divided by 9. Then what did I do next? We added 2. That's your shoe. What do you take off first? Your shoe. So if I have to take off my shoe and I have to undo adding 2, what's my first step? Subtracting 2. Do you see that? And 2 subtract 2, well, that zeroes out. That's how we undid that. It was easy. Let's simplify the right-hand side. What's 20 subtract 2? 18. What about this left-hand side? What do we have? X. Careful, not X over 9, but X divided by 9. And X divided by 9 is equal to 18.
I was right. I did it.
Now, next step. X is being divided by 9. How do I undo dividing by 9? Cambry? We multiply it by 9. And whatever I do to one side, I do it to the other side. And thank goodness we have calculators. 18 times 9 is equal to, Landis, what is it? 162. And again, let's figure out what happens over here, right? The reason we chose to multiply by 9 and write it like this is because we are undoing dividing by 9. So that part is all undone. What am I left with? Just X. X equals 162. It is a good refresher. Now, eyes on the screen, because I said create at least 2 viable arguments that you could use. Guess what? This right here, this is argument 1. Argument 1 is show your work. Showing your work makes it so that you don't have to repeat every single thing. Well, first, I had to figure out my shoes and my socks, and I had to subtract 2 to take off the shoe, and then you don't have to restate all of that. Just show your work. Showing your work is creating a viable argument. And the second way that we can show or create a viable argument, Landis has a great idea. Landis, what do you think we should do? Yeah, do the opposite way. In other words, check your answer. What do we know? We know that x is equal to 162. So that means I should be able to, instead of x, I'm going to be writing 162. So it'll be 162 divided by 9. Love how everybody is writing this down. Pencils are moving. We're including it in our notes. 162 divided by 9 plus 2. If everything works, what should it all be equal to? 20. So we're going to ask ourselves that question, and you guys have really nice calculators that you can type this in exactly as you see it. 162 divided by 9 plus 2, is it equal to 20? And it will tell you true. Or if you just need to take it baby step because your calculator at home is not so good, Angel, we would type in 162 divided by 9 plus 2, and it would tell us that it is 20. So did it work? There's your second viable argument. It is now time for you to reflect. What is it that you are going to do to create viable arguments? What is it that you are going to do to critique the reasoning of others? I strongly advise that the goal that you set for constructing viable arguments is showing your work. And the reason I advise this is if you don't do it, I'm going to make you do it anyway. So you may as well just make it a goal and just get it done the first time. I can construct viable arguments by showing my work. You could also construct viable arguments by checking my answer. So you choose what you want to write down there. And then the next sentence as well. I can critique the reasoning of others by, I'll give you some ideas here. How about comparing your work? Compare your work to others. Maybe you can critique the reasoning of others by actively listening. Listen and understand. Whether you agree or disagree, listening is that first step. That's it for your reflection. That's it for Math Practice 3. Thank you. Don't forget to include or do your Canvas assignment, which is creating it in your own words. Remember, this needs to be submitted in Canvas. That's it, and we'll see you next time.